Thank you very much, Rosamond. And good morning, everybody. And I'm delighted to be here. I'm very honoured to be asked to join such a distinguished panel of speakers here today, covering, the wide range of what I'm sure all of us are very interested in. How can we, in fact, involve people more and significantly in depth in decision making, in how society organises itself and so on. In approaching this and coming to where I am today, I suppose, way back in the 60s, before many people here would have been born or active, I went to West Africa in development work, and I was in a small village running a trade training or training apprentices. Now, when I say apprentices, I'm talking about 28, 30-year-old teachers who saw opportunities in transferring and so on and so forth. But what struck me there was the level of organisation within the village and other villages. Very democratic. Everybody in the village had a job to do, was recognised, did it without prompting. The elders, which I now would consider myself one, were very greatly respected. And it all happened before we arrived, and it continued, and government began more and more, if you like, coming down and introducing red tape and all kinds of other things. So coming back to Ireland, I continue working in what I would generally describe as community development, and then as a politician, it has always, I suppose I would say, intrigued me, certainly enthused me or helped me to stay involved, to try and ensure that people are much more involved in decision making, much more connected with where we are and where we're going to. And in pursuit of that, one of the people I worked very closely with, although I've been independent myself all my life, was Maura Mullarney, whom many would have remembered. She was the person who brought the Green Party to Ireland and did a lot of other things. But she was a very far-seeing woman in many respects. And we used to talk about LETS, local economic trading systems. And after the 2014 election, I got an opportunity of pushing that at council level, and we introduced social credits in South Dublin. And they still exist, and they work quite well, and we have expanded them out into carbon credits as well. So we're going to push the boat, if you like, in that kind of a context, and cutting our teeth in it. In more recent times, when the government came along and talked about the importance, especially in putting people first, they talked there about engaging with people, engaging with citizens, and set up the PPN, the People's Participative Network, which of course is a misnomer because it really means organisational network rather than anything else. But if people are connected to organisations, then you have it as well. So down through the years, a number of us have been interested in introducing participative democracy, and in more recent times, going back about 10 years ago, looking at one way of getting into that would be participative budgeting. And that has, not been taken up in any great way until recent times. And over the last year, especially, we have had debates at council level about it, and we have come up with an approach. Now we're doing it in the context that South Dublin is one of 4 local authorities serving the Greater Dublin area. And there's a lot of questions around about whether we should have a directly elected mayor for the whole of the city, how the general hinterland around should be engaged, and so on. So there's an awful lot of discussion going on, and some of it hopefully will produce results. But in South Dublin, we have about 265,000 people, which is a significant population. We have 120 different nationalities. and possibly about 200 different ethnic groups in there. We also have developed very rapidly over the last 40 years, roughly. Much of it without an awful lot of planning. I mean, in terms of people. Yes, planning in terms of other things. But it greatly lacks facilities and infrastructure. And a lot of the response I get, or a lot of the interaction with citizens is around those kind of things. So in that kind of a context then, we went back, if you like, to look at this idea that had been around for quite a number of years, and we said, what can we do about it? So it was agreed that in the current year, 2017, we would set aside 300,000, and that would be up for grabs. We, having previously talked about it and proposed it, by labelling it a pilot, you get away with a lot of things once you say this is a pilot. So we're not committing you to anything. However, the Chief Executive, Danny McLaughlin particularly, took it on board and really enthusiastically went for it, as did our new Director of Finance and other very senior people, which is very encouraging. And we have an alliance across the Council which is made up of people from, in my own grouping, the Community Alliance, there are 9 of us. Then Sinn Féin have 10 and Labour have 4. We're the ruling group. And so, but we've tried to maintain in this particular approach a total all-party involvement. So the 300,000 to begin with is exclusive of any administration costs. That was one of the first things we had to establish, because an awful lot of the money could get eaten up if you look at how it would be managed. We decided we would take one electoral area. We have 5. We take one and we would take that out of a hat. As it turns out, lo and behold, no reason, no anything, my electoral area was the one that was not a pure coincidence. And I guarantee you the other 4 were in the hat as well. So we then set up a cross-party steering group who would oversee how the thing was done. But like a lot of things in local government, we depend very seriously and very heavily on the paid staff and the executive. And I must say they have been exemplary. We agreed from day one that this would be done with the minimum amount of red tape. I believe personally in building the road by walking it. But you know it's a road you're building, and you know you're walking. So once you establish those 2, then that is take that everything else that comes at us is an opportunity for building. We also set up an ICT portal, and this is very important, and it took a little while to get the software, but we eventually got an excellent software that allows for consultation on the one hand, because you can do a certain amount by getting out there and trying to communicate with people in a hall like this, or even on social media. But you can also, as you know, achieve a huge amount by interaction, and so this particular portal enables us to do that. It also enables people to make submissions in relation, I'll come to that in a few minutes. And finally then, the same portal is used for voting. And when we talk about voting, we spent a little while looking at how honest people might be, because we agreed we would have online voting. But looking at the demographics, not everybody would have access or would feel comfortable in that kind of a situation. And so we also set up an opportunity for paper voting, where people could vote in a traditional way. And of course, when you do that, you may end up with people voting twice. We also said that we would allow everybody to vote, whatever age they were. And again, you're trusting people that they won't, if they have a 3-month-old baby, that they won't assume that that 3-month-old baby would love to vote for. We do accept that as we move along, we will probably, using that kind of a system, introduce a PIN control and so on, so that you would end up with a much more equitable and a much more honest system. But like I said, we're building the road, so you don't preempt everything. We also commissioned a government body to do an ongoing piece of research and evaluation of the whole process. Because what we're interested in most is the process. Yes, the outcome is very important. We don't want to end up with a situation where, you know, the operation was a success but the patient died. And we don't want the patient to live, but the process is a disaster. So the process is very important. But also videoing the process as we go along from day one, so that we have another bite of the cherry, if you like, in when we come to do the evaluation. There were two stages. First stage was the gathering of ideas and submissions, and getting out there and propagating and promoting the idea among the population of the particular area we're talking about. Probably about 50,000 people. We're conscious already that, according to the putting people first, the chief executive around July every year, in fact in July every year, has to put a notice in the public press inviting people to make comments as to how the property tax, the household property tax, should be spent. Should it be increased or decreased? Everybody in the room from Ireland will be aware that the household property tax can be increased or decreased. And so we've been putting those ads in the paper over the last couple of years, and in the current year, even though people like myself also promoted the idea, we got 2 responses. So with 50,000 people, 2 responses to very expensive ads ain't a lot. And those 2 incidentally came from my own area, which is, I suppose, tells another story. But the first stage was to try and influence, or I should say, inform people as to what we were attempting to do. And then the second stage would be the voting. Now, when it came to looking at the submissions that came in, before they came in at all, we had set out a number of criteria, very simple criteria. Like I said, our whole purpose is to have the minimum amount of red tape, but sufficient that everybody is fairly clear. So the first thing we said was that any project was already planned or finance was available for, that would be out. So if people promoted that or suggested that, that would be out, because clearly you're wasting your 300,000, it was going to be done anyway. The second thing was, it was responsibility of another agency. Now, listening to the wonderful presentation we had earlier on, obviously participative budgeting can be used in any kind of a service, but we're only responsible, and unfortunately that's where we stand at the minute. There was 300,000 up for grabs. One project could have been up to 300,000, but it was over that, it was eliminated because it wasn't feasible in the current year. If it came within current schemes, you know, for example, it might be a cycleway, and that scheme is going to happen anyway, well then it would be a waste to be using the money for that. It can be dealt with under existing repair and maintenance, because you would anticipate a lot of people would be saying they want this fixed or that fixed, and again, if it's coming under those, that's where it should happen. And finally then, if it involved the private sector, we don't have any control over that, so therefore we wouldn't go down the road of supporting it. So they were the kind of criteria, the limiting criteria. After that, everything was up for grabs. And we did emphasize from day one that whatever ideas came forward, if they didn't fit these criteria, they were ideas, they were priorities, there were people we're concerned about, and they shouldn't be lost. So we would bank them or hold on to them, and either to be picked up by politicians later on, or picked up by the executive, or we push them on to other organisations to have them done. But we saw the whole exercise in itself as valuable because it was enabling people for the first time, the very first time, to look at their own areas and to come up with the sense of priorities that they had. When you think back to one of my earlier slides where I was talking there about the lack of facilities and the lack of infrastructure, it'll be interesting in a minute when we look at the projects that got through the process. Some of the projects that didn't, I'm not listing them here, but everybody who submitted a project, we responded to them. And we explained to them why it didn't get through, if it didn't get through. Now later on, when we come to the evaluation, we come to giving feedback in a broader sense to the public, we can also include, the explanation as to why things that were provided or were proposed haven't happened. Because I would see it as very critical that people are exposed to the ideas other people have and exposed to the reasons as to why they didn't go forward, and encouraged to continue to think and continue to propose and continue to be creative and imaginative. That's very, very important. Because if you're engaging with people in this kind of a context, yes, you have a particular purpose. In this case, to spend 300,000 or to use 300,000 to enhance your locality. But in the process, you are churning up an awful lot of, you're engaging with people. You're getting people to talk in a very real way. And this is why I think that participated budgeting is a very strong way of building participative democracy, because you're going to have a real outcome. We have looked at other times at other ways of trying to involve people in decision making. But that decision making, you listen to people, you say that's very good, you walk away, and maybe they see the result of their participation, or maybe they don't. But in something like this, it's very concrete, it's very down to earth, and the guarantee we had was that the projects that went through or got through would be done in the current year. So it's very important to build and maintain confidence and a rapport between citizens, executive and elected representatives. Now, the consultation itself started in March. The whole thing had to be telescoped into a very short space of time, because we needed to, having agreed our budget in December, we needed to start as quickly as we could. And we really got down to business of planning the thing around February, and then we had our first consultations in March. And the way that worked was we selected 3 areas and invited people to come to a meeting. Not the best way in the world maybe, but it was all we could manage at the time. A little bit like the song, what it says, the railway hotel was all I could afford on the night for the honeymoon and so on. So all we could afford to do was to invite people to a traditional kind of place in a traditional kind of a sense, and then having informed them what we were talking about, then allow them in syndicate groups to share their ideas and to come up with proposals. But in parallel to that, we also accepted proposals, of course, online, or if people wanted to write them in, we would accept them anyway at all that they would get. I suppose we had, over the 3 workshops, we had around 400 people maximum attended, but quite a number of others did get onto the online to find out what this was about. It's a particular issue, I feel, especially in urban Ireland, to try and reach people. There were a number of people there at those sessions who said, I only heard about this by accident, but we said there was a leaflet dropped into every house, and you know what happens, leaflets very often, they get rubbished with a lot of other promotional material. So it's very, very hard. If you're down the country, I think, because I'm a countryman, things get, circulated, information gets circulated, and I was very interested in some of what you were saying there earlier on about that whole area. So reaching people is a real issue, a real problem. And we hope that by doing what we're doing, others who didn't feel they should get involved, or others who didn't get involved or who didn't hear about it, will at least, see the fruits and begin to get involved as time goes on. Now, having got the submissions and whittled them down to 17, the ones that got through at the end of it, for 10 good reasons, they were ranging in price or in value from 5,000 on one end to 120,000 on the other. Top of the list, if you like, was that playground, and that would cost 120,000, but it got through. The second most expensive there is the multi-games wall. That's 100,000. So there you have 220,000 already, accounted for. And so you can imagine that the other ones then come in at a lesser price. There's also a feasibility study there for a very historic Guinness Bridge over the River Liffey. There's also more money there for access to a heritage site in Palmerstown in the old Isolde graveyard, which has mythical and all kinds of connotations about it. And there's also the restoration of the historic bridge in Lucan, which is the King John Bridge, which is said to be the oldest bridge in Ireland. Now, it's interesting that those got through, bearing in mind that my concerns, a lot of our concerns, would be around facilities and infrastructure, and the fact that we have a mushroom population, over a very short space of time, but yet the kind of a balance of what got through. Yes, there are some facilities in there, like that playground, like the All Games wall, for example, and then the Christmas lights, and the free library, and the apple trees. Those are interesting. Now, I'm not going to do a total social analysis on the results of it, but I think that there are some interesting pointers in there when you look at people, when they're given the opportunity, what would they like to spend their money on. The other area that we were worried about, well, two areas. One was that politicians like myself would promote a pet project, or wannabe politicians, those who are looking forward to 2019 and the next elections, that they would promote some ones as well. And we said, if they do, so what? But we did ask politicians, especially councillors that we have a bit of contact with, to please kind of observe, if you like, the South Dublin Convention. In other words, let us be honest and let us keep away from it. And that has happened. So politicians like myself, we didn't get involved, even though people emailed us, phoned us, spoke to us, corralled us and said, will you support my project? And so you'd worry in a way about people being, very vocal about their own project. But why not, Because that encourages others to think, and you get people who see it as a good idea or a bad idea. And at the end of it all, that's what participation is about. It's about getting as many people as possible to put their brains together and to come up with solutions for what is there. So we're very concerned about that. The second thing we were very concerned about, well, there were a number of things, was that people might vote geographically. And so nearly every community within the broader community felt that they weren't going to get anything because the other communities were going to outvote them. And so we tried to promote, charity begins at home, but it doesn't end there. Voting begins in your own area because you know it very well, but it shouldn't end there. So would you please keep a kind of a balance? Now, anecdotally, I know, for example,
you've got 3 minutes, Guss.
Okay, that the playground that's there, which is in Palmerstown, which is a small enclave of about 12,000 people, and they felt they weren't going to get anywhere. But I do know that a lot of people in the wider area supported them because they said, look, when you look around our area, the general geographical area, there is a need for a playground down there. I think that's very worthwhile. I think it's a very mature way to be going about it. So, very quickly I just pop up there the frequently asked questions, because I think it's interesting when you go through this kind of an exercise for the very first time. People of course ask, what does it mean anyway? Secondly, how does it work? How do I get involved? Very, very interesting. Is it new or has it happened before? Does it mean extra money and extra amenities? And finally then, on the same score, is this not the job for, we elect people to do it anyway. And that was an opportunity, and I think you touched on it yourself, for us to remind the people, no, I'm elected representative, I'm elected councillor. One of my reserve functions is the budget. But it is not my function to make the budget. It is the function of the executive to make the budget. They are the permanent staff. But it's up to me to pass the budget. Quite different. So I am participating in the budget already, and now we're asking people to be part of that process. And I think by we sharing with them our lack of total control, we are, I think, helping people to appreciate that we are not just simply giving them, as it were, a third-rate or a fourth-rate involvement, but we're giving them a share, a real share in the same as the rest of us have. Will the process be dominated by the loudest voices? I've already touched on that, and it actually wasn't. But of course, there were some people more vocal than others. What can the money be used for? And we said you can use it for anything. And that's why we got about 160 nominations or proposals, and we whittled those down to 17. But the others haven't lost. How can I vote? And will I know the outcome? So we had a launch of on the night, a bit like the Oscars. We didn't have any false envelopes, we'd be glad to know. And we announced it there and then. And the last thing I'd say about that whole involvement, if you like, that there was quite a lot of involvement at the beginning. There was a lesser involvement in the workshops, but a good involvement. There was a good involvement in the voting. I think I skipped through there, but there was 2,500 voters, which is the highest vote we've ever had in the council for anything. We go out on public consultation in quite a range of areas. The most we ever get would be 150, 160. So this was phenomenal. That was only one small area of the county, and we got 2,500 votes. It is absolutely very, very encouraging. One of the things that encourages most about it. And then they were asking, well, when will it be done? And we said it will be done in the current year. So that's where we're at the moment. We will, come September, have the result of the IPA evaluation. We will then have to sit down, that being in July, we will then have to sit down with the citizens, especially the PPN, with the councillors, and with the executive, and taking your little diagram you have there as to how you design and do anything. Look at the results, look at what we learned, and look at where we go here. But already I know that for us councillors, for the executive, and for citizens, it does look very encouraging. Personally, I think it's the way to go. Where we get, God knows, we'll mark it.